So I want to welcome everybody here. I'm glad to see you all. And this talk is called All About Foxes with Bob Michelson. I'm very happy to have him here. He's a wonderful photographer and naturalist. And but before we begin, let me tell you that I'm going to mute you all as you enter the call. So please save your questions until the end of the hour or type them into the chat box. But if it's a kind of a pressing question, I will go ahead and ask Bob as we go along. Wait a minute here. Sorry, this one.
Yeah, actually, Jean, if I could just interject for a second.
Yes.
I prefer people ask questions as we go through this presentation, so we don't
Okay.
leave anybody behind.
Okay.
I don't
Very
mind being
good.
interrupted in mid-sentence. It's not a problem.
Okay, because you know I do that all the time. So also you guys do have the ability to unmute yourself, so you can go ahead and do that. So if you have something pressing, just come out with it. And also I'm filming this program for Milton Access Cable, so it will be available to view at a later date. And I want to thank the Friends of the Milton Public Library for their support of my programs. Now, let me tell you about our speaker. Bob's work has appeared in numerous magazines, and he has been diving for 42 years. It might be longer now. He is a PADI dive master, a specialty instructor in underwater photography and videography, a naturalist, and a PADI Project Aware Fish ID based in Braintree, Mass. His company is called Photography by Michelson, and his website is www.pbmphoto.com, which I'll put in the chat for you. And I also want to just tell you that he's coming back with me via Zoom August 13th to do a program called, Bob,
It's called Rescue and Rehabilitation of Sea Turtles on Cape Cod.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, good. So now please join me in a warm welcome for Bob.
Hold your applause, everybody. It's okay. So today we're going to be talking about the foxes of New England. And we have two species of fox that live in this region. On the left-hand side is the red fox and the gray fox. Let me just start off with some background. The gray fox now on the left-hand side of the screen is the only native species of fox that's always been in New England dating back thousands of years. The red fox was introduced to North America from England about 150 years ago for hunting purposes. Now, red fox are just as common throughout the country as gray fox are. So what we're going to be covering today is the history of foxes in New England, physical characteristics, habitat, and diet of both species, and how to coexist with foxes and other wild dogs. They're called canids. So that includes the coyote, the foxes, wolf, which we no longer have around here. Those are all considered wild dogs. So here's foxes of the world. In this part of the country, we have red fox in the top left-hand side. We have gray fox in the bottom left-hand side. And there are other species in other parts of the North American continent. The only two we see here are the red fox and the gray fox. You have to go up to Arctic portions of Canada to see the Arctic fox. Sometimes they will come down as far south as extreme northern Maine, bordering the Canadian border. But the only two species we have here are red and gray fox. Let's start off with the gray fox. This is a beautiful animal that has a brown, black, tan, and white body, blackish markings around the nose, snout, and nose, and around the eyes. And they have reddish color fur, radiating down to brown and black fur. The tail's a mix of colors. Beautiful animal. They're found throughout all 6 New England states. They're in every forested habitat that we have around here. What's really neat about gray foxes is, unlike the red fox, the gray fox can climb trees to escape predators. So if there's a high density of coyotes around, there's a low density of red fox because coyotes will kill and eat gray fox. Sorry, they will kill and eat red fox, but they can't capture gray fox because the gray fox can climb up the trees to escape the coyotes. Red fox cannot climb trees. They're ground dwellers. So here's the range of the gray fox in the United States. They're found in every portion of the United States, including the entire part of Mexico and the Yucatan Peninsula. The only exception is the Pacific Northwest. They don't go that far north and east, north and west, I should say. They like forested habitat. This is a classic northern New England forest habitat of northern New Hampshire. This is the White Mountains region, bordering the Lakes region and the White Mountains region of New Hampshire. The red fox is introduced from the UK. We see movies where they always refer to Blue Hulu with the fox hunt, and the hounds are chasing the foxes. That does happen in the UK, not here in the United States. Red foxes are wild animals in this part of the world. They have adapted to live in all habitat, forested habitat. We also find them around our houses and our neighborhoods. They have an orangish type coat with a brown mottled orange tail ending in a white piece of white fur at the very end of the tail. And these things have a beautiful face, pointed ears. They have an extremely keen sense of hearing, an extremely keen sense of smell. The foxes will see and hear you long before you ever have an idea there's a fox in your backyard. And here's the range of the red fox around the world. They have the widest distribution around the world of any fox species on the planet. All the areas shown in orange and purple have red fox living there, including Australia. So they're all around the United States, Canada, including Alaska, all the way up to the Arctic. They're throughout all of Europe and Northern Africa. So they're everywhere. They will live in open field habitat. They will live in forested habitat. They're a little bit more diverse with the habitats that they can live upon and live amongst. Gray foxes prefer mostly forest habitat, so they can climb up to escape predators, and they can climb up to a tree to escape a coyote, or if they're in wolf habitat in the central part of the country, they can climb up a tree to escape a wolf. Wolf and coyotes, the two largest member of the canid family, cannot climb trees. Gray fox will eat rabbits, squirrels, mice, small mammals, fruits, and berries. So they're omnivores. An omnivore is a type of an animal that eats both meat and vegetables. So they're opportunistic predators. If they can find a body of a dead animal, they just assume eat that versus using a lot of energy to catch a live meal. Here's another graphic of what gray fox eat. The fruit, rabbits, small mammals like mice, rats, squirrels, lizards, and vegetables. So they'll hang around your garden, they'll eat your tomatoes, they'll eat your squash, and they'll try to get at pumpkins. But pumpkin rind is kind of tough. They try to avoid pumpkins. The red fox has a wider diet. They eat rodents, rabbits, small mammals, birds, insects, lizards, frogs. They'll go in the water and get fish. They're a little bit more diverse with what they can consume, as this graphic shows you. Rodents, rabbits, small mammals, fish, lizards, birds, insects, opossums, raccoons. They're not afraid of too much of anything other than their big cousins, the coyote. And that's the only larger canid that we have in Massachusetts is the coyote. Feature adaptations. They have a large bushy tail, which matches their coloration. They have a white tip to their tail. The gray fox does not have a white tip. The coloration of the main body extends right down to the tail of a gray fox. So if you see one of these animals from a distance, they're about the same stature off of the ground. They have shorter legs, a very long body with a long fluffy tail, but the red fox will have an orange color to its entire coat. The gray fox will have more of a mottled coloration throughout, that it changes colors throughout from the head to the tail, but there's no white on the tail. All red fox have a white tail. They all have small padded feet to hunt in mud, sand, snow, all habitat types in the northeastern part of the country. They have an extremely keen sense of hearing with pointed ears. They have very, very sharp sense of eyesight for spotting prey, and a very nice set of sharp canine teeth for attacking and killing and tearing apart their food. They are brightest red in coloration with gray fur coloration throughout their body. And the gray coloration mostly goes down to the legs. The main body itself is reddish, hence the name of the animal. Gray fox sitting on top of a den. All these animals will build a den by excavating a hole on the side of a small hill, They'll take space underneath your shed, under your garage. If they can burrow under your garage, they'll do so. If you have a deck, they'll go underneath your deck. If you have even lattice work underneath your porch or your deck, they'll dig underneath that to get underneath it and use that habitat and dig a hole and make a den out of it to give birth to their kits. Baby foxes are called kits, not pups.
Bob, he looks so sneaky.
Here's a gray fox climbing down from a tree after the threat of a predator has moved on. And in this case, it was a coyote. So gray foxes can climb trees to escape predators, but red foxes cannot. So like I mentioned earlier, wherever there's a high density of coyotes, there's a low density of red fox because they can't escape the larger predator by climbing a tree. And they're readily consumed by coyotes. So you have a pretty strong coyote population in the Blue Hills. You have a more prominent gray fox population in Milton than you do a red fox population because of the prevalence of coyotes in Milton. Here's a perfect example of a couple of coyotes in the Randolph area, bordering Braintree, near the Blue Hill, the reservoir that we share with Randolph, Holbrook, and Braintree. There's a reservation there that there's a couple of families of coyotes that have their home and their dens there every year. Here's a coyote pup. Now, coyotes and wolves, their babies, like your domestic dogs, are called pups. Here is a 6-week-old coyote pup at the mouth of its den. They don't leave their den until they're about 8 weeks old, when mom starts to take them out on short hunting trips. And for the first couple months, they spend pretty much exclusively in their den. Foxes do the same thing. Here's a coyote on top of a boulder on the Randolph-Braintree border on Pond Street, if you're familiar with that part of the town. Pond Street runs from Braintree into Randolph to North Main Street, Route 28 in Randolph, in North Randolph. Coyotes adults are busy feeding their young from early spring through late fall, and they're more active 24 hours a day, trying to give their babies enough nourishment to survive and prepare them for their first winter when food becomes much more scarce for all meat-eating predators. Another predator of foxes are bobcats. Bobcats can also prey upon red and gray fox adults and kits because bobcats, unlike coyotes, can climb a tree to attack a young or adult gray fox hiding on a tree. And our bobcat population is expanding south and east from the central part of the state and then Merrimack Valley. So within the next 5 years, we're going to see bobcats in Milton and black bears in Milton year round with babies. Think we're having fun with foxes and coyotes? We have yet begun to have a lot of fun with our predators. Here's a bobcat climbing down a tree, showing its nice sharp claws that are retractable like every domestic cat. But this cat's about twice the size of a domestic cat. Bobcats get to be 30 to 35 pounds. I don't know of any fluffy that gets to be quite that big unless it's grossly obese. Here's a bobcat with a collar hopping over an open field in Connecticut. This is Greater Hartford, Connecticut. They have a study ongoing where they're studying bobcats. I visited 3 den sites while photographing this particular study, which is another program for another day, where we visited 3 den sites. One was underneath the shed of a house in a Hartford neighborhood. One was underneath a church shed, and one was abutting a very busy commercial property. Excuse me.
Bob, can I just interrupt you for a minute and say that someone had asked, Lillian and Nick had asked about, you were talking before about elk, just to diverge for a second. Do elk actually live in New England, or are they only there as a zoo specimen?
They're a zoo specimen at the Southwick Zoo in Mendon. There are no wild herds of elk in New England. You have to go to upstate New York and Pennsylvania to find wild elk.
Okay.
And then elk are distributed throughout the northern half of the United States, west to just before you get to California and the West Coast. So Montana, Wyoming, the Great Plains, they have massive herds of elk.
Okay, thank you.
The only wild elk in the northeastern part of the country are in Pennsylvania and upstate New York, not in New England.
Okay. All right. I hope that answers your question, guys. All right. Thanks, Bob.
You're welcome. Here are 3 7-day-old bobcat kittens. At 7 days old, the kittens are, their eyes are not open yet. They don't open their eyes until they're 10 days old. And mom is very busy feeding her 3 kittens. She feeds them just like all mammals feed their babies. They don't have a bottle that they feed them with. They use their nipples. So mom will feed her baby bobcat kittens that way through, lack of a better word, an udder lake from a cow. I don't know really call what the correct name for a mammal's breast area should be called. So we're not going to go there. Gray foxes. Gray fox or vixen, this is a female, it's called a vixen. They're actively hunting to feed her young kits. Mom is the main charge of the kits once they're born. Dad goes off and has nothing to do with raising the family. Here is a 6-week-old gray fox kit starting to figure out how to start climbing a tree. They just emerged from the den and it's hugging a tree, trying to figure out how do I scurry up this thing in case a coyote comes by. And here is a 6-week-old again learning how to climb a tree. Mom shows them first, climbs down, and then gets underneath their butt and nuzzles them up the side of the tree. They have retractable claws that they can grab the tree and climb up by similar as a black bear. They jump and leap and grab on as they're climbing. They push up with their hind legs, grab with their front claws, pull up with their front claws, push up with their hind legs, and so forth. And so they get up to a limb that they can rest on. Red fox, a female or vixen fox is keeping a close eye on her brood of kits. This was taken down in Somerset. I was going down with a team of underwater archaeologists to look at a shipwreck on the Taunton River. And we happened to come across, you can see a dock that the female's standing on top of. Well, her kits were running around on top of the dock. These are 6-week-old red fox kits. There were 4 of them here. 2 of them were off the dock, 2 of them were on the dock. And mom's watching them, being very wary of us being nearby. I was photographing out of the back open door of an SUV. I did not get out of my vehicle. I didn't want to disturb the mother and the kids. So I did it from inside the vehicle, photographing outside an open window in the back. Here are 2 kits, 6 weeks old, trying to figure out how am I going to get down from this dock so I can play in the tall grass. What do I do now? I don't know, Mac. What do you think we should do? Well, follow me. Quickly hopping down. The other one follows suit. And then they posed for me in the grass. They gave me this adorable postcard, which I actually have produced into a postcard in an 8x10. 6-week-old kits hiding in tall grass in Swansea. And they don't think I can see them. Really? They don't think I can see them. They're naive baby kits at this point. They're not smart enough to be afraid of us yet. Adult foxes want nothing to do with people. They stay away from us other than to steal our chickens from chicken coops. Here's a 6-week-old facing the camera just in front of her den, which mom made underneath that dock that I showed you earlier. It was stored in a boat yard in Swansea. The owners were nice enough and did not move that dock into the water until the kits were old enough and they left the den area. So the owner of the dock was conscious enough and kind enough to not disturb the den site by moving the dock, because it's a business. They want to put the dock in the water so they can rent the space and get money for it. But they left the den alone till after the mom and the kids left at 2 months old, which was late May. So they got that dock in a little bit later in the season than what they really wanted to. Here are the 2 kits playing in the grass. Again, thinking they're hiding from me and I can't see them. It was so cute. I took a bazillion of these photos. Here is a 4-month-old red fox kit running in the backyard in Barnstable. Starting to look more like mom. The fluffy tail starting to fill in. very, very powerful. You can see these things leaping in tall grass. They come up off the ground and they pounce on their prey. They're pounce predators. So they'll pounce on top of a rabbit, on top of a squirrel, on top of a rat or a mouse or a vole, and they pounce on it, and that's when they grab it from the neck and kill it. Here's two 4-month-old kits running and playing in the backyard in Barnstable. Here's an adult red fox showing the white tail, signature orange coloration of the body, and radiating more down to black to come down by the paws. And there's white on the bottom part of the face, but more orange in the top half of it. Gray fox look nothing like these animals. You'll know the difference immediately if you see a gray fox versus a red fox. And if you have any questions, grab a photo with your camera or your smartphone, send it to me. I'll tell you definitively what you're looking at. Here's a red fox walking towards the camera on snowpack up in New Hampshire. They're well equipped to survive our harsh New England winters with a very thick fur coat. And they're active year-round. They don't den up for the entire winter. Here's a male red fox just sitting on the snow, just kind of going, I don't know what I should do now. I think I want to go hunt. I'm not sure. I'm just going to take a break, catching his breath. It was cold out this day. How to keep your pets safe from foxes. Both fox species are very smart, sly, and very accommodating, and they'll take whatever is available. They'll take baby Fluffy, they'll take baby Rover, and it's up to us to be cognizant of the fact that we are in their home range. They were here long before we were here, especially the gray fox. Gray fox has been around for thousands of years, long before our families came over from Europe or wherever our families originated from. So what we need to do to be safe is, if you have your puppies out in the backyard, stay out with them. The foxes can climb over a fence, climb under a fence, and get access to your pets. Just because you have a fenced-in backyard does not mean they're safe from predators. Foxes can climb a wooden fence. They can climb a chain link fence. Bobcats can climb everything. Coyotes can easily jump over a 6-foot wooden fence. That was documented in Randolph, in North Randolph. People witnessed a coyote jump over a 6-foot picket fence to get at their pet in the backyard. And then the next day, their cat was gone. Pets and cats are also prey to both species of red fox and gray fox. They're opportunistic feeders. They don't care how adorable and how precious our pets are to us. If they're hungry, they'll take them. So if you feed your pets outside, bring the food inside and feed your pets indoors, please. Dog food and cat food will attract foxes. It's an easy meal for them. Cat food and dog food will attract black bears, coyotes, and bobcats to your backyard. And once they find a ready source of food, they're not going anywhere. So to prevent a bigger problem, feed your pets indoors. Put them outside in a fenced-in area, stay out with them until they're done doing their business and playing around or whatever they need to do, and bring them inside. Don't leave them outside unattended. You're asking for trouble if you do.
Bob, excuse me, but there's a question from Lillian and Nick. Are red and gray fox ever known to interbreed?
No. Red fox and gray fox, unlike our coyotes, have always been independent, separate species. They do not interbreed. Coyotes, as if you recall from a presentation that I gave at the library several months ago, our coyotes are hybrid coyotes. They interbred prior to about 30 years ago with whatever was available when they moved into our territory. So to refresh your memories, coyotes came into our part of the world through upstate New York into northern Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and they interbred with whatever was available. Gray wolves in the Great Plains area, large breed domestic dogs, wherever they could breed with, they bred with. So our coyotes that we see in Milton and the Blue Hills are 84% Western coyote, 8% gray wolf, 8% large breed domestic dog like German Shepherd. So most of the coyotes I see around here look more like German shepherds than they do a coyote. But they have a
Hmm.
long pointed snout, a big bushy tail, which is much less indicative of a domestic breed dog. And they're also taller in stature than any domestic breed dog that we have.
But the foxes won't interbreed, the red and
Foxes do not interbreed. There are enough gray foxes and enough red foxes. They will only breed with their own species. They don't mix it up.
okay. All right.
So
So,
any other questions? I'm done with my slideshow. Any questions or any stories anybody wants to share on interactions they may have had with foxes?
yes, you guys can unmute yourselves and ask a question, please.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm not quite sure how to phrase it. Do the red fox and gray fox, do they tolerate each other in a shared environment? I would
They
say
do.
no, but what do they do?
They do share each other. They usually give each other a wide berth. All wild dogs stake out a territory, and they stake it out by poop and peeing around the perimeter that's their territory. And if another fox or coyote comes into that territory, they will attack that animal to get rid of it because that's their home territory. And you don't mess with my home territory. They're very protective of their home range. So if a red fox came into a gray fox range, that gray fox would chase the red fox away or confront it and attack it if need be. They're very protective of their home property, kind of like we are. I don't like when trespassers come on my land. I tend to shoo them away. I wouldn't get as violent as a fox or a coyote would, but I tend to shoo strangers away from my yard. I don't want strangers on my property. It's my property. I work hard for this. So do the natural species. They work hard for their home range as well. And the older, more established coyotes and foxes have priority over younger male and females coming up through the ranks. So mom and dad will shoo away the youngsters to go search out and establish their own home range. And that may take them some time because they're so well established around here. It's going to take them some time to find an area not already occupied by a pair of gray or red fox. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, I'll try to rephrase it.
So Bob, you said they're afraid of people. I mean,
They're timid. Adult foxes have the natural ability, thankfully, to be afraid of us. They perceive us as an apex or top predator. That's very smart of them. If they stay away from us, they're less likely to get hurt or killed.
yeah.
Foxes in most New England states can be hunted during certain seasons.
Okay,
So they're
so
smart enough to stay away from us.
we have another question here, Bob, which is from Craig. Are gray foxes more aggressive than red foxes if they got into a fight, or are they equal?
I would say they're equal. Both foxes are the same size, the same weight. They're just as protective of their home turf as the other species would be. I wouldn't want to be cornered by a fox of either species. I see a fox in the wild, I give them a wide berth, never encroach upon any wild animal, a fox or any species of wildlife. And if you see a vixen, a female with her young kits, give them a wide berth. Don't get between the mother and her babies. She will attack you thinking you're going to hurt her babies. And the same would apply when my daughter was a baby. You wouldn't want to do that with me either. My daughter's all grown up now and married, so she and her husband can fend for themselves. But when she was a baby, you don't want to get near my kid.
Well,
So
that's
they're very protective of their own.
that's
I have
certainly
a question.
true.
Do we need to worry about foxes running across the road when we're driving down Canton Avenue at midnight? Do they
You have to worry about that?
Yeah.
They're mostly nocturnal hunters. So they're active primarily at night and the wee hours of the morning. During daylight hours, when it's hot and sunny out, they hunker down in the forest to stay cool. So they hunt mostly at night and in the very early morning hours of dawn. So yeah, if you're driving down Canton Street at midnight, you have to watch out for coyotes and foxes alike jumping in front of you because they're hunting. And they're hunting now to sustain their young pups for coyotes and kits for foxes.
Bob, how prevalent are foxes in Milton in particular?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the population of gray fox is more prevalent than red fox because you also have a relatively high population of coyotes that live in Milton, and the coyotes will help keep the red fox population under check because they hunt them. So
Because
you
they
have a
can't
much higher
climb
population
trees.
of, you have a
Or they-
higher population of gray fox because they can escape the coyote predator by climbing up a tree to get away from them.
I mean,
Red fox cannot.
Do we have a lot of them around Milton though, or not?
Oh, yeah, they're all around the Blue Hills. They're in all the conservation land in Milton. They're everywhere around your town, yes. But because they don't like people, you tend not to see them that much. Unless you're out at night or very early in the morning. And if you're out walking your dog, for example, later in the evening or early in the morning, a fox is not going to attack your dog. A fox looks at a German Shepherd as, this dog's bigger than me, I'm staying away from it. A coyote, on the other hand, they're not afraid of anything or anybody. If you have walking your dog early in the morning or later in the evening and a coyote approaches you, there's more to be careful of.
Mhm.
Foxes will not attack you unless they're rabid. And I'm not talking about chasing a rabbit. If they have foam coming from their mouths, if they're acting strangely, if they're not afraid of you, there's something wrong with them.
Mhm.
Bob, I have a question about coyotes. I haven't seen many around recently. We used to see them walking down the streets in the neighborhoods.
Be thankful.
Yeah,
Be very thankful.
I am, but I'm just wondering why they disappeared. I mean,
They're still throughout the Blue Hills, and packs of coyote have actually been documented taking down an adult white-tailed deer in the Blue Hills.
Mhm.
So our coyotes are 25% larger than their western counterparts that they grew out of. Western coyotes emigrated up into Canada west of the Mississippi River around the turn of the 1900s. And they interbred with wolves in the middle part of the United States and Canada. And the wolves have been there. And then as they moved further east in Canada, they came through upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and interbred with whatever was available. Large breed domestic dogs, whatever was available. That's why the DNA makeup of the coyotes we have, they've been given the misnomer of a coy wolf. There's no such animal as a coy wolf. That was given dramatized by the media. And I worked on a story for Natural History magazine on the coyotes in North America. And Dr. Roland Kays, a renowned researcher of wild canids, especially coyotes, did DNA analysis of 10,000 coyotes across the United States. And he determined the DNA makeup of our hybrid coyotes are 84% Western coyote, 8% gray wolf, 8% large breed domestic dog. That's where that came from. That was from a renowned researcher in his field.
So there's no such thing as a coy wolf. I remember you told us that. Coy
Correct.
dog, did they call them coy dogs?
It's just called we have hybrid coyotes.
Because that's what we
Hybrid-
always called them in Vermont growing up.
hybrid
Coy
eastern coyotes.
Yeah, okay.
They're eastern coyotes, and they hybridize. Oh my gosh, I can't even say it. They did hybrid. They bred with whatever was available, coming through the Berkshires and through upstate northern New England until about 30 years ago. Now there's so many of them around, they only breed with their own kind. So the hybridization has ceased. So they're only breeding with other coyotes right now. And they're so prevalent, they're now as far south on the East Coast as Florida. And they
Okay,
did that within 30 years.
interesting, yeah.
So don't
Okay.
worry, there's plenty of coyotes around Milton. Be thankful you're not seeing a lot of them. Your dogs and cats are a lot safer.
I
Okay,
have
Bob.
another question.
Okay,
Maybe
and
I
then,
can.
and Laura, we'll get to your question in just a sec. Go ahead, Francis.
Okay. Ticks have been a terrible problem on a lot of animals, particularly even moose up north can die from just being so infested with ticks. What's the situation with foxes?
Foxes here in New England don't have a major problem with ticks. Being a survivor of that wonderful deer tick disease, Lyme disease, which I've had now for 15 years and have had 6 major flare-ups. Thank you, Mr. Deer Tick.
Mm.
That's supposedly why they have the deer hunt in the Blue Hills, but they're not really doing anything with the deer herd population with that. So let's not even get started on that topic. It's a sore spot with me. I don't agree with it. I
Oh,
don't agree with hunting close to residential neighborhoods and schools. There's part of the Blue Hills Reservation abuts the Donovan Elementary School in Randolph, and they hunt there for deer. I don't approve of that.
mm.
But winter ticks, a much larger tick up in northern New England, are what's infestating the moose population. And there's a large mortality rate, especially of calf moose, from an infestation of winter ticks. They get to be grape size in northern New England, and they're making the moose anemic by drawing so much blood out of them. And that happens with the adults as well as the calves. Down here in southern New England, we really don't have that kind of a tick issue. Emaciating our deer or our fox or our coyotes or any predators at all. That's primarily northern New England. Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine sees a winter tick infestation of primarily moose.
Does that answer your question,
There's a major
Francis?
problem of the large 75,000 plus moose herd in the state of Maine,
Okay.
which
Thank
is
you.
another program for another day, Gene.
Okay, good. All right, so thank you, Francis. So now, Laura, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for this talk. We do see a fox or more than one, I'm not sure, never one, only one at a time. So, and I sent you an email with a photo. It's not very good to try and maybe
Oh,
you could see the difference between a red fox and a gray fox, but it's through the window, so it's not a great photo. But one thing that we love watching is the pounce, the straight up in the air and down. And I just wondered if you had noticed that as well, and if what it is that they're doing with that straight up pounce, which is very fun to watch.
That's their hunting behavior. All foxes are pounce hunters.
Wow.
They pounce on their prey. They leap up in the air and they land on top of the prey to pin it down. They bite it from the neck and they kill it.
Ah,
So all fox species throughout North America are all pounce hunters. Coyotes will chase the animal down, grab it by the neck, and choke it to death, and then they'll have a feast. Foxes pounce on their food,
Yeah.
almost like they're being playful, but it's
yes,
not.
it's really
not,
fun to watch. Yeah.
It's not play.
Yeah.
It's serious business.
Yeah.
Serious business. I have not personally witnessed that. I've read about it. I've seen photos of it, but I haven't witnessed it myself.
and Laura, I think you had told me about your experience with the foxes in your backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had. I'll have to look at the pictures. I don't have my phone right here, but
Does the
I'll
fox
look
that you
to see
took
the
a photo
pictures,
of,
thank you.
I can ask you a question, maybe we can fine tune this. Does the fox in your photos look more like the one on the left-hand side of the screen or the right-hand side of the screen?
Well, to my way of looking, it looks like the red fox, but I don't remember the white. I would think that white end of the tail would be so prominent, but that's what I don't feel. I feel like it's a darker, it's a bushy tail, but it looks more like a black tail. So,
If it's more of a black tail, it's probably more like the gray fox on the right.
okay.
Because
Well,
if you look at the coat on the gray fox, it does have some reddish coloration on its sides, but not
Mhm.
nearly as pronounced as that on the red fox on the left-hand side.
Okay. Well, I learned a
And they
lot.
have, and the
I
gray
assumed
fox
it
has
was
more of
red.
a mottled coloration on the top half of its coat. It goes from black to gray to white. And the red fox is just reddish color here throughout its main body. Does
Yeah.
the fox you have blackish legs?
Yes, I thought so.
If it has blackish legs, it's a red fox.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to pay closer attention now. And
Try to
now,
get some better pictures and share them
Yes.
with Gene, and Gene can
Yeah.
get them to me. Or if you don't mind, Gene, I can put out my email address, which is public. My email address is P as in Paul, B
Yeah,
as in boy, M as in Mary, dot like a period, I as in indigo, N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie, at Verizon, like the phone company, .net.
okay.
You
I'm
can
writing
email
this.
me a photo at any time. I'll respond within a day or so with a positive ID.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah, I am
thanks.
putting this in the chat. So now, Laura, did you ever see babies in your backyard?
No, and I've only seen the one, one fox at a time, and it could just be the same fox. So I've not seen kits, and I would love to. And we do have coyotes, so I worry, of course, that maybe the fox won't be back. But
Right.
we've seen it a couple of different years, and it's easier to see in spring, sort of when the grass is shorter and even there's sometimes snow on the ground, and they're just beautiful. So it's just a
Yeah.
surprising thing to see because they're generally, I think, hard to find, like you were saying, Bob.
Oh, so they're
They,
such a
they,
pretty
they're very
animal.
smart to stay away from people. So they'll hide in the grass. They'll hunker down and curl up so they blend into their environment. They use their coat as natural camouflage. Red fox will hide in conifer forest, pine cone forest. So there's pine needles on the ground. If they lay down on the ground, they look like the ground.
So Bob, how do you find the foxes that you take the pictures of?
I go out with biologists and they lead me to where they hang out. Or
Oh, oh,
you can go to zoos and photograph them in natural habitat.
yeah.
The gray fox on the right-hand side is on display at the Squam Lakes Natural Science Center in Holderness, New Hampshire, right next to Great and Little Squam in New Hampshire.
Mm.
Red fox on the left is a wild animal, but there's also red fox on display at the Maine Wildlife Park up in Gray, Maine. They also have gray fox on display at that zoo. The Maine Wildlife Park is really cool. It's about a 2-hour ride from here, north. It's just west of Portland, Maine, in Gray, Maine. It's very inexpensive to get into. It's owned and operated by the state of Maine, and they take in sick and orphaned animals and bring them back to health. They only have Maine wildlife there. It's not like the Franklin Park Zoo or the Stone Zoo that has African wildlife and Australian wildlife. It's only New England wildlife. The same with the Squam Lakes Natural Science Center. They have all New England wildlife. So if you want to see animals that live in our area in natural settings, but in captivity, go to one of those two places.
I just have to share that, and they're not New England foxes, but my husband and I have gone a few times, several times, to Montebello, Quebec, and they have a wonderful park there, Park Omega, which you can drive through with your car, all kinds of animals, and they have white foxes.
Oh,
White
they have Arctic
foxes.
foxes.
Yeah,
They have
and
Arctic
white
fox.
wolves. Yeah, they're really beautiful to see.
Yeah, white fox is our Arctic fox. You're only found up in Canada,
Really pretty.
in the extreme northern part of the Arctic tundra, basically.
Oh, cool. Well, this was really interesting. Are there any more questions? Okay, Francis, are there any interactions between our rattlesnakes and foxes?
Good question. I haven't asked either to find out. If a fox is bitten by a rattlesnake, it's most likely going to perish.
Hmm.
So if they're smart, they stay away from the rattlesnakes. Now, I visited the dens in the Blue Hills. I can't tell you where because they're a state endangered species. But if you do go hiking in the Blue Hills, there are timber rattlesnakes and copperheads up there. Wear hiking boots, and watch where you're stepping.
Hmm. Actually, our friend hikes there often, and he saw a rattlesnake. I think it was a rattlesnake.
I saw an adult coiled rattlesnake in the Blue Hills. Like again, I can't be more specific because it's very specific den locations that we don't want people to know about.
Yeah.
Because people think that, oh, it's a timber rattlesnake. I can collect it and sell it.
Uh,
I can collect it and kill it because it's a dangerous animal. Well, they were there a lot longer than we were.
yeah.
So there's two places in the United States right now that still have a population of the state endangered timber rattlesnake, the Blue Hills Reservation and Mount Tom and Holyoke.
Is
They're
that
the
right?
only two remaining places in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that has a viable population of timber rattlesnakes. And the rattlesnakes in the Blue Hills has drastically reduced in population in the past 30 years. I went out 30 years ago and was given a tour by Milton author Tom Palmer, who wrote the book on the topic on timber rattlesnakes. So he took me up to visit all the den sites 30 years ago. and we saw rattlesnakes in September.
So
And he told me since that time, the population has drastically been reduced.
how come? People shoot
And
them?
people collect them and kill them, but people collect them and sell them. There's a illegal trade of reptiles.
Oh, wow. Oh, that is not good to hear. I mean,
I don't
it's
want to
good.
give anybody a bad idea, but if you collect a state endangered animal and sell it, you can make a lot of money, but you risk serious penalties of going to jail.
Yeah.
And I'm a conservative type of a guy when it comes to wildlife. I would rather just take a picture and leave only bubbles. If I'm underwater, I don't harm a fish when I'm taking its photo. I don't go fishing anymore. I only take pictures and leave them alone so that
Oh,
they're for future generations.
good for you, Bob. And I know
So,
you said you don't really eat fish.
well, I don't eat fish since my early days diving in Boston Harbor before they cleaned it up.
Yeah, yeah.
I have
You-
some
do
pretty
you eat-
grotesque.
Do you eat any fish? I think we talked about that.
I eat scallops.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's the only seafood I'll eat is scallops because you can depurate them. Most places that harvest scallops, you can send them to a depuration center where they flush out all the impurities from polluted water. Then it's safe to be consumed. They could do that with shellfish, but they can't do that with lobster or shrimp, and they can't do that with fish.
Okay.
So if you eat clams or scallops at a reputable restaurant, they're safe to eat because most of the cases, if they've been harvested from a polluted area, they've been sent to a depuration center and all the impurities are flushed out of them naturally until they're healthy to eat.
Okay.
But you can't do that with lobster. So make sure your lobsters are harvested from clean water.
How do we
I
make
saw-
sure of that? How would we know?
Go to a reputable seafood restaurant.
Okay.
They don't sponsor us, so I don't give out the names.
Did somebody else have a question? I thought
Oh,
I
I
heard-
was just going to mention that I believe the Blue Hills Trailside Museum has a red fox now, as of last year when I visited.
They have two red fox on display
Hmm.
outside, and they also have timber rattlesnakes and copperheads on display inside their building.
Yeah.
Yes, you know,
So if you
Abby, I
safely
did
wanna
the
see-
fox. Yeah,
Native copperheads and timber rattlesnakes that were caught in the Blue Hills, they're on display inside the Trailside Museum.
Yeah, because I know I work for the Blue Hills Nature Camp, and we like every summer it's just like we always find at least one copperhead or rattlesnake around. You know, their
Oh, this
breeding
is the
season
time.
is yeah,
This is the time
exactly,
of the year. This is the time of year they're out hunting,
exactly, and breeding
and then
season.
they go back to their dens by September. They get the last warm rays of the summer sun, September and October. Then they go in their dens, and then they give birth to the young, and they're live bearers, so they give birth to live snakes, and then they come out with their babies in the springtime.
Hmm.
And the passing of a female copperhead or a timber rattlesnake in the Blue Hills would be devastating to the population. That's why we don't tell anybody where we find them.
yeah, we haven't really had a snake talk, have we, Bob?
And I could put one together because I have the photography, but I wouldn't be able to tell anybody where to look.
Right. That's
I'm
okay.
sworn to secrecy by the state.
I understand. Good, okay, so you
Can,
guys,
can I have a question?
oh, yes, please.
I have an interesting interaction that I wanted to ask you about. I saw in the field up beyond where Laura lives what I thought was a red fox. And at that point, I thought it was a coyote that were approaching each other in a joyful way. They joined and they ran together off to the left. They turned around and they came back and went off to the right. And then they nuzzled each other and said goodbye and went back in the direction from which they came. Could they be mates?
Most likely mates. The male and female are different sizes.
And so what I thought was a coyote was probably a gray fox.
Correct.
Okay, that was a mystery I hadn't yet solved.
They were
I think you
probably
asked me that question.
they were
when we
probably around the
decided
same
it.
stature. A coyote would be this tall.
Well, the gray
Fox would be
fox
about this
was
tall?
definitely bigger than the red fox.
Well, they're both the same height, but the male is
It
larger.
was bulkier,
The male is larger than the female.
right? And they looked like they really were in love with each other and dancing along together.
Fox
They do
love.
They do tend to mate for life. So
Oh,
foxes are kind of like most humans. I say that because I've been married for 36 years, but my son-in-law is on his third stepmother, something like that. So not everybody's like my relationship, and I'm sure you can all talk amongst yourselves with your families, but foxes do tend to do mate for life. So do coyotes, but
Huh.
the rearing falls typically under the mom, and dad has very little to do to help mom.
Huh. That's an
Not too
interesting
different from
story.
not too different from humans, because mom does bear most of the responsibility from what I've witnessed in my lifetime raising children. I mean, I tried to help when my daughter was younger, but I was overruled a lot of times by my wife.
Good for her, Bob. Good for her. I've been married 43 years. You know,
Another short timer.
many of the animals that you talk about in your programs, the mom does the work for the babies. And the father, he's there, but then he goes off. And she takes care of, like the bears. I think that's what you said about the bears.
Well, dad's only job is to impregnate the female, then he goes to find other females to impregnate.
Right.
He's not loyal at all. The same with seals. Did I ever talk to you yet on gray seals?
Um,
Gray seals and great white sharks of Cape Cod?
yes, we did that one
Okay.
last summer.
Well,
Yeah, we
like I
did.
talked when I gave that presentation, I talked about dad's only function with the female gray seals to get her pregnant, and he has a harem of 20 females,
Unbelievable, huh?
and he's not loyal to any one of them. Mom
Huh.
is solely responsible for taking care of the pups once they're born. Dad has nothing to do with it.
Oh.
So not all mammals are like most humans.
Well, so in what animal worlds are the males involved in taking care of the babies? What about penguins? Aren't they, like penguins, don't they?
Penguins are birds, they're not mammals.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, no, because you know that movie about the penguins and then the father keeps the baby in his underneath his
Penguins,
feathers.
I haven't studied penguins a lot, but I have photographed them, and mostly in captivity. They're only found in the Antarctic, and I can't afford to go there, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But friends of ours went on a trip last year to the Antarctic and showed us beautiful photography of several species of penguin that live down there. And it would be really cool to go there, but it's out of the reach of my budget. I just
Yeah.
can't afford a trip like that.
Well, I think from that penguin movie, though, they have the baby and then they put him under his feathers and keep
Yeah,
him
to keep
warm.
them warm.
The father does, the
Yes.
father penguin. Yeah. So that probably happened anyway. Well, hey, thank you everyone for being here. And I hope you learned some things about foxes. I love foxes. I just think they're so cute and beautiful. And I had a cat named Fox, which I keep telling Bob about, because he was kind of crafty. But anyway, thanks a lot for being here. And oh, actually, Craig said, oh no, wait a minute. We've got one more thing here. So hold on. Let me go here and just see what this question is.
Another
It's
question?
about possums. Oh yeah, so Francis said, you mentioned possums. Do we have them around here or is it too cold? And Craig said, we have seen possums in the area, but not lately. And that's true. And where we live.
You have in Milton, you have opossums, you have skunks, you have all north, you even have a beaver in your local pond.
Wow,
Good luck with that one. Once they start jamming up the outflow of the pond, you're going to have a problem.
a beaver. We had a
Yeah.
possum hitting the road in front of our house when we first moved there. And
Yeah, there's
I tried.
opossum throughout all of North America. They're called the native Virginia opossum.
Oh yeah, we never had a talk about
There's
possum.
only one species of opossum in North America. That's it. And they're a marsupial like the kangaroo. They keep their babies in a pouch in their tummy.
Mm.
Oh, our possum didn't live. I tried to save him. I tried to keep the cars from hitting him again, but he perished. All right, let's see.
There are several wildlife rehabilitators around. In Milton, I'd say the closest one might be the New England Wildlife Center in Weymouth. You might have local rehabbers that live in Milton that can help you with different species, but not all rehabbers are licensed to handle all wildlife. Some only do fur-bearing animals, some only do reptiles, some only do birds. not all of them do every species.
Okay.
So you can contact your animal control officer in Milton, and maybe he or she can direct you as to who the best rehabber might be for the injured animal that you found.
Okay. Well, I had them
And
come.
just one word of caution, and especially the springtime, if you find a baby white-tailed deer fawn, leave it alone. Mom's hunting during the daytime. The baby will hunker down and stay silent during the daytime. Mom will come back at night to feed him. If the baby's still there 24 hours later, call animal control. If you find babies in your yard, keep an eye on them, but don't touch them. Don't get human scent on them. A lot of animals will abandon their babies if they detect human scent on them.
Oh,
If it's injured, that's one thing. If it looks like it's orphaned, give it a day or two, see if mom comes back for them.
okay. That sounds like good advice. Laura wants to say, thank you for a great presentation. I sent a photo and video. Pretty sure it's a red fox. So I'm going to check my email later and I will forward that to everybody so they can see it. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Gene.
Good. Well, thank you very much for Bob for a very interesting presentation, and I'm glad everybody was here with us. Thanks for being here. And so I hope you'll come and join us via Zoom on August 13th
13th.
for the rehab of sea turtles on Cape Cod.
Rescue and rehabilitation of sea turtles.
Yep. Bob does a lot of good work. Thanks again for being here, and I guess I'll
See you again next month.
Okay. Good night, everybody.